And we're back, and it's COMP392, and it's the winter 2016 semester, week 3, lesson 3, part 4, right? And we just stopped talking about, we just finished talking about TypeScript and modules, and we talked about how we can use external modules, how we split across files, and the different steps. Definitely I will talk about this on a test coming up. Don't know which one, but I will. And I had a question on when the test is for next day. It could be next Monday, could be Wednesday, don't know, right? One of those 2 days. We'll try and keep consistent. We'll try and make it so that it's the first 10 minutes so we don't waste anyone's time. I know I hate when people are waiting around because it's like you're watching paint peel and I have to entertain you, right? I'm just trying to accommodate as many people as I can here. Okay, so we talked about TypeScript. Let's talk more about our little modules. So we have our little file here. And by the way, I've uploaded all our changes that we made from last video up to GitHub. So if you want to compare and you want to see if this config module we just made, this config module, if it works for you, if you want to try it out, and if it's not working somehow or you're getting an error, check my code on GitHub and compare my code with your code. Sometimes, as we found, it can be a finger typing error. If you don't type things correctly in the path, that could cause a problem. So that might be the issue. The other problem is sometimes is especially if you're doing something manual, like you're doing things with Cloud9 as an example, or some other thing that you don't have an automated task runner to transpile all your code. We may have different TypeScript files that are split across different modules, and if you don't transpile all of them, you may have partial functionality. You might have some issues, and that's why if you're doing things manual, I caution you, learn how to use gulp. It might help you out, especially when we get more complex. That's the way to go, gulp or grunt, okay, so that you can transpile things faster. And you can use grunt and gulp as an example with Cloud9. Okay, so I want to construct this control variable, this control object here. Here's an object I want you to use, right? If I was to run this thing again, just to show you what I get, right? And I don't have it up here anymore. But let's try this out. If I run this, if I reveal in Finder or in Explorer, and I run this thing, if I double click on the index.html, I get this little corner that's running, but I don't have my control module working here, this dat GUI stuff, right? So I want to kind of take this up because we've done it a couple of times. I've got my axis helper right here. You can see the axis helper, right? But I want to kind of create controls so that when I click on a control, I want to rotate, right? I want to rotate this thing, right? Continuously. I want to change I want to have a control that allows me to rotate this thing continuously. How do I make that? I kind of have it in my boilerplate code, right? But how do I write this? And why did I split it up? If you notice, the book won't do this. It writes it all in one page, right? So how do I make this control? Can anyone help me build this? I want to kind of make a class, my control class. And my control class is going to create a control object, right? And my control object is the thing that I'm going to pass into my dat GUI. Let's take a look at that for a second. So remember that we're using the dat GUI library. So if I go dat GUI, this is one of the things we're using. And if I go to Google Code for dat GUI, it kind of tells you how to use it, right? It has there's some really cool documentation up here to talk about how this thing works, right? Now this is on Google Code, right? But and maybe there's a wiki that tells us. No, it has no wiki. Maybe there's some kind of there's some code that can tell us how to work it. I'm just going to see if there's one that's on GitHub, and there might be one on GitHub. Let's see if there is one on GitHub that we can go to. So let's say dat GUI on GitHub, right? And here it is, right? Sometimes they have a little bit of some details on how to use it. First, you include it, in which we already have. And then when we use .GUI, you can use it with require.js, which means you can use it on the back end as well. You can use it on with Node.js as well. And building your own .GUI, and they talk about how to do some of it, but they really don't talk too much in detail about how to build the actual module itself here, right? A lot of it's in your book. It actually tells you how to do that, but you can also look at the source code if you want to understand how to do it. If I look at my actual files, though, it actually describes it even better, right? So if I go to core, I go to game.ts, notice how I define a GUI object, right? So a GUI is a graphic user interface. That's what it normally stands for, right? So if I scroll down and I go here to controls on line 100 of my code, I have this object, which is a new GUI object. It's a new control object, right? Okay, cool. What I'm doing here that's different than the book is I'm creating a control object alongside the GUI object. Okay? My control object is just a class that I'm going to pass into this add control method that I've created down here. So add control is here. So normally what it would look like is this: GUI.add and whatever the control object that comes in, and then you might have some kind of function that you call or something like that you kind of call up here. And you can also add additional values for the control object up here, right? So if you don't know how to construct this thing, let's say we can start from here. Before we create something, I want two values. I want a rotation. I don't have a bounce, but I want to have a rotation value that I want to have that it's going to be stored somewhere. Now, there's different ways to do this. I'm getting you to use an object because I want you to practice objects and modules, right? Do I have to use it? No, I don't, right? I'm making you use it because I want you to learn, right? And it's more complex. Okay, so I want to have a rotation speed, right? So in some other examples that are up online already, I have this example, but let's try this together. So I'm going to go into my objects. I'm going to go into my control.ts, and inside here, I want to create a class member, right? A class member called rotation speed. Let's make it public, right? So we're going to call this public, and we'll call it rotation speed. Rotation speed, right? There we are. And we'll make it a number, right? Because it's going to have a number, rotation speed. There we go. Cool. Well, I want, when I call this class, I want to pass in a default speed, right? I want to pass a default speed into the class, right, as an example. And I want to modify this default rotation speed when I click inside my, I don't know why they're calling, when I click inside of my, my GUI, I want to modify my rotation speed. Okay, so when I create my constructor, I want to also pass in something called rotation speed. And here's where people get confused. And this is why I use the this keyword. It's also of type number, right? But this is a local variable, and this is a class member variable, or a instance variable, if you will, right? So I'm going to use this keyword. This dot rotation speed is equal to, you're going to see this a lot, rotation speed, which is going to kill you. You're going to say, what the hell? Why are you saying rotation speed is equal to? It's this rotation speed is actually a local variable. It's this piece, and this rotation speed is pointing to this piece up here, which is the class member variable up here. That's what's happening. Okay, cool. I don't have any public methods right now. All I want to do is when I want to have my rotation speed come in inbound. Okay, cool. Well, that means that in my game.ts file, when I create my control object, notice how there's an error right now. What is it expecting? It's expecting rotation speed. So I got to put that in there. Let's put a rotation speed of 0.5 or 0.5. Let's put 0.5 in there. Okay, we're passing in rotation speed. Yay! So now we've set the rotation speed to 0.5. Cool, cool. I want to add a control, and this is the second piece, inside my method, my add control method. I want to add a control on my GUI. I'm just separating this out again. You see this online, the same. And I'm just comment this one. So my control object is passed in there. And inside my control object, we're going to access an object called rotation speed. Rotation speed, right? It has to be spelled the same way. And notice how we have an option to pass in some values, right? Some values. Notice there's a status, right? And there's also some other objects here. Look, take a look. Take a look. There's different. I have some different signatures here. Look, I have a min number and I have a max number, right? So I can specify a rotation speed, min and max in here. So here's my min. My minimum value is going to be 0, so no rotation. And my maximum value is going to be, I don't know, 5, right? Something crazy. So this is cool. This is my rotation, blah, blah. I set my rotation speed. Okay, cool. Now that I've got this, my rotation speed, I'm going to assign this to my control object. It's going to modify whatever I do with my GUI. It's going to modify my control object, which is my control that I'm making. It's going to change the value. It's going to hold that value for me. Okay, cool. All right, now down here inside my game loop, I got to do something, right? I got to change my rotation speed right, for my object. And maybe I want to rotate it on one axis right now. Because, I mean, I really haven't specified which axis is going to rotate. So my object that I've created, right, what do I have on my screen here? I have a spotlight, I have an ambient light, and I have a cube, and I have a plane. I want to rotate my cube. How do I do that? What kind of set of instructions do I put in here to make it rotate according to what the rotation value is for my control? Yes?
Cube.y plus equals control.
Almost. Cube dot, what am I changing? Rotation. Now notice if I go cube dot rotation dot, and then there's different ways of doing rotation. I can do dot x if I want to rotate across the x-axis or the y-axis. Or I can go dot set, and I can set the rotation for x, y, and z. So there's different options here. I can use the setter, right? So I can set the rotation to whatever I want, right? Or I can use the actual value, which is okay too, the y value. And I can say is plus equal to, and then I can attach it to my control, which is control, right, dot, and then rotation speed, right? I can actually change that rotation speed around. Right? I can do that. Is that enough? Should that function, is that enough to change my rotation for just my cube in one axis? Should that work? Well, let's check it out and see if we get an error. So I'm going to kind of transpile here, and I'm going to go back to, to check this out. And let's check this out in my terminal. And whoa, that's really fast, right? It's like hugely fast. Look how fast it goes. Let's see if I can pare that down a little bit so it's not as crazy. And look how it's like 0.11. That's pretty fast. 0.11, right, as an example. But so obviously 0.5 is insane. And what if I go to 5, like I said? So bam, right? It's like, it looks like it's spinning actually slower, but it's just crazy out of control, right? And notice how it doesn't affect my frame rate too much, thank God. Okay, so this worked, actually. I created my control. I changed my value, right, up and down. I can change how from 0 to whatever, but it's really crazy, right? Okay, let's modify this one thing and I'll let you guys go, all right? So this is cool. My minimum and maximum is not right, so let's make my minimum. What if I said my minimum value is like minus 0.5 and my maximum value is like, positive 0.5, right? Still high, 0.5, but my control starts off with like a rotation of 0.05, right? So it starts off as a really slow thing, right? Let's see if that's good. I'm going to transpile, and I'm going to go back to this and refresh, and now I've got some much slower value. Notice how it's 0.05. It's really slow, but as I ramp up, I can go positive. Notice how it starts in the middle, up to 0.5, which is still crazy. Or I can go negative, right, into the negative values and spin the other way around. So notice how my minimum and maximum values don't have to be, and I have a lot of granular control here, so I can modify, I can see what this thing does over and over again, depending on what way I want to spin it. Guys and girls, here's one answer to your assignment number 1, right? You want to make it across, now I said across any axis. I'm just making it spin across the y-axis, which is the axis that cuts across the top. Okay, so this is the way you create a control. You make a rotation speed, but now you have to apply that rotation speed to x, y, and z, depending on which one I click. Okay, so that's the challenge. By the way, I have examples of that online already. If you look online, you can see examples of that. Questions before I let you guys go for next week?
How do you reset a control?
Sorry?
How do you reset a control?
Reset as in click on a, back to like to where it was? You'd have to make another button. So you can create a button to click reset, and it'll reset the control back to its defaults. So maybe you have a default control that sets everything back to its defaults. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Remember that next week, Friday at midnight, your assignment 1 is due. Friday next week at midnight, okay? Next week, Friday, February 5th. I want there's 3 things. Look at your assignment detail. There's 3 things I need. We'll talk about it on Monday, okay? Thanks, guys. Friday, February 5th at midnight. All right.